Well, that's
Mm,
silly. Hang
yeah.
on. Are you there? Can you hear me?
We are recording, yes?
Oh, okay. Just a sec. I have to. How's you're recording? Okay.
All
I
right. You're
think.
on.
Wait.
Ready.
Okay. Now I'm ready. There's
Okay.
me after 10 years of Pluto and Scorpio. It's amazing how what it does to you. Although you do recover. This is a great photograph that's actually in front of a friend's tanka. So I'm being sacrilegious, and we used to always call ourselves sisters in sin. My friend and I, both Scorpios. Great friend. Anyway, so I'm going to go back up to the very beginning. All right, here we are. I'm trying to get used to the new format. There we go. All right, well, obviously this is the introduction opening a slide, and um, I want to recite something to you that's really important. And the thing is that none of the planets are, had any evil intentions. Well, actually, that isn't true. If you read anything of Greek myth or any myth, any of the myths, whether they're Hindu or Chinese or Japanese, all of them are really pretty horrific. And the one thing that they are pretty consistent with is their absolute and utter denigration of the feminine. And seeing as the Western civilization, as it's called, which Gandhi thought was a great idea, shame it didn't work, that in Western civilization, our origin myths come from what Zeus came down from the north. That's how they say it. And I started to write a newsletter all about Wotan and the ring cycle, because Wotan and Thor are related very much to Zeus. So one has to assume that they are the origin point of Western civilization as it descended into the Peloponnese as Greek myth. I love Greek myth. Everybody knows that. I make it pretty palatable. I like it because it really does describe the archetypal content of our collective. And our collective actually does include the entire globe, all the possible types and organizational arrangements of people. And in the beginning, I'm going to read from Hesiod, who is a great, well, actually he wasn't. He was quite a boring poet. He was a farmer, but he was a little older than Homer. So his writing actually was earlier in the time before the Iliad and the Odyssey were written. And in the beginning, this is how he writes: chaos was first of all, but next appeared broad-bosomed Gaia, sure standing place for all the gods who live on snowy Olympus's peak. From chaos came black night and Erebos, which is darkness. And night, in turn, gave birth to day and space. And Gaia bore starry Uranus. And I love this photo. As an equal, to cover her all over and be a resting place, always secure, all among the blessed gods. And so there was no evil intention here, except they were a gory bunch of people, if we think in terms of the gods and goddesses, who never got the form of recognition that they really perhaps are due now, which is something that I'm working on. But today we're talking about the transit of Uranus in Aries in a square to the planet Pluto in Capricorn. This is a long, long transit. I think back, time is flying now, I'm getting older, but in 2010, in the summer, on August the 1st, actually, there was that's when the Uranus square to Pluto was evident to me, because it also involved Jupiter and Saturn. So every single one of the ancient Greek gods that were involved in any form or shape of war were all in a place together. I got to watch my clock. So I'm listed here, the 7 exact squares. This is, I just copy and pasted it right out of my most recent newsletter, which is something that you all might like. In fact, you will. And I'm going to move forward to just skip right into this because I'm going to look at this again, okay? I have it in 2 parts. What we've got here is the opposition, and I found a point. I have a lot of clients, by the way, born with the Saturn opposite Uranus and Pluto. And that's really only about a 2.5-year spread if you want to consider the orb of Saturn and just widening it to 2.5 years. I think when we're talking about themes and we're talking about ethos and we're talking about, the general state of affairs, we're really talking long periods of time. And orbs, are really significant and very, very important in natal horoscopes and astrological timing, because whenever there's an exact orb, we get very excited. But we have to think in terms that we're looking at the whole time that Saturn was in Pisces, Uranus was actually with Pluto in Virgo. And so we have this kind of general overall long period of time. And I pinpointed March 1st, 65, just because it's the coolest chart, because it's got Mars, Pluto, and Uranus all, conjunct, and they're all retrograde. Here's a quick lesson on retrograde planets. Any planet that is outside the orbit of Mars and opposite to the sun in a trine, any area in the trine, see Neptune? Those planets are always retrograde. That's how they work. That's how it works. So it just happens that this is a very tidy little picture of what was going on as the theme of the 60s. And this is a glamorous picture of Uranus. This is a very nice vase painting of the actual abduction of the feminine, the maiden, the Kore, into the underworld so that Pluto, Hades, wouldn't be lonely. He needed a woman. Life is not complete without having both masculine and feminine functions, which has nothing to do with gender identification. It has to do with the way we think, the way we experience our world, whether we embrace our compassion. Every woman has thrown something hard against the floor at some point in your life. Every man has looked into the eyes of his baby and cried. So there's nothing wrong with either, but we're really missing out on the feminine function in our relationship world today. And here we are, 50 years later, after this sort of, quote, summer of love. A lot of bad stuff happened. I started thinking about the 60s again. Because I don't tend to live in the past, so I was very much involved in it. It really was one of the most violent decades that we ever had. Well, that's not, what am I saying? It's not true. It was a violent decade. We had, everything from Vietnam, to, the assassinations of 3 of the best men that existed in the United States. There was black people hanging from trees. It was really awful. However, there was an element in there that said the shadow, which is Saturn, opposite Uranus, Pluto, was going to be something that we would, as 60s, say, front runners, entrepreneurs, people who were behaving differently, setting up Woodstock and doing that, we had to be very conscious of the darker side. And the darker side, of course, was, led up into the 70s, but it was an incredibly inventive period of time. The planet Uranus itself, if we just think in terms of Uranus, what we're thinking in terms of is of innovation, incredible amount of forethought, foresight. Actually, Tarnas, years and years ago, Rick Tarnas, who wrote Cosmos and Psyche, which is where you can look up all your cycles, by the way. They're all there, all the outer planetary cycles in the appendix. It's an excellent book, good textbook. Anyway, Uranus conjunct Pluto is always involved in some way in an aspect where there's a kind of catabolic and an undermining element taking place in the collective unconscious. And this picture, by the way, is really cool. It's my elder granddaughter. She's an artist in art, and she is a picture of her shadow against, and she's doing something funny with her fingers against the school wall, and I love that picture. So we have the shadow, Saturn, Uranus, and Hades, all involved with each other. Now, I'm putting this up first because I didn't know the order in which would be best, but this happens to be the discovery date of Pluto and the horoscope of Pluto and the rulership of battle, or the battle of rulership over Pluto. And notice that there's Uranus is in Aries and Pluto's in Cancer, whereas we now have Uranus in Aries with Pluto in Capricorn, and we have Saturn in Capricorn opposite Pluto squared by Uranus. And that was when Pluto was discovered. Very interesting. I love discovery charts because it shows what the ethos is within the context of the planets as they make aspects to each other at the moment of discovery. And what we have here, and I talked about this, I believe, in one of my talks with you, maybe not. Yes, I did, with your outer planets one, where the moon in Scorpio kind of won, because in mundane astrology, or in when you're, horary, the moon is very important because the moon is the final word. And when we think in terms of, well, Mars always used to rule Aries, but it's not really a very powerful position, and the moon is in mutual reception with Pluto, and to my mind, that was what sealed the deal, was that the moon in Scorpio was in mutual reception with Pluto in Cancer. Oh yeah. Don't tell me I had that on there again. Okay, this was yesterday. This is like 1967. Somehow, my brother sent me this. It was part of a TV thing about how the hippies had overrun Vancouver in 1967. And I guess I'd gone back up to do a show because I was living in San Francisco at the time. But yes, that was what it was like to be in 1967, an idealist, with bubbles blowing. It was wonderful. And today, we've got to do it all over again. Here's a picture of friends of mine. Here's Ram Dass, out again. So everybody's in the streets again. This is Larry Brilliant, author of a book called Sometimes Brilliant. Absolutely fantastic book. This doctor here was one of the Hog Farm members and one of SEVA, the founders of SEVA, Solution Insight. Wiped out smallpox single-handedly, with a team of doctors and so on, and blindness in India, and then went on to do many other things. So this was today, this was yesterday, and suddenly we've got to do it all over again. So what's exciting about what's going on right now, and here we have this picture again, is that if we look at just the astrology, it looks to me, because this is just a setup chart. This is actually a time. The thing, and I was explaining this to a friend of mine the other day, the thing about qualitative time and quantitative time is very important, because unlike in other countries, the United States is quite unique in this way, in that they have an absolute set election and an absolute set inauguration. And the inauguration is always January 20th at 11 in the morning in Washington, D.C. That's brilliant. what is even more brilliant is that by accident or design, I have no idea, Uranus was right on the ascendant, with Pluto in the 10th house of the party and power, and opposite Jupiter. So we had Jupiter opposite Uranus and involved in the Pluto square. Now, what we're looking at here is not a coincidence, but some kind of conspiracy. And what that means it really is to breathe in together. So all of us breathed in, and this is what happened. So we're looking at another revolution, right? But we're looking at one in a very different way. It's almost as if, it took 50 years for Uranus to move all the way around from Virgo as Pluto continued to traverse its way into Scorpio. Uranus moved all the way into Aries. It took 50 years. It has been 50 years since the Uranus-Pluto opposition. And a lot has gone on since then. And so when I look at Uranus, I'm looking at a lot of different things, like the political and the global situation is actually far, far too vast to deal with, even if that's all you did. It's very complicated, and people are suffering from two kinds of things. Uranus equals personal anxiety, and Pluto is actually equivalent to what I call existential angst. But they also are, Uranus equals the freedom to be, and Pluto is depth perception. So when you've got two apparently, sort of diametrically, spiritually, consciously opposed to each other, embodied in the same figures, Uranus and Pluto, we are looking at something very familiar, and that is but something that's also developed much more. I never imagined, for example, that 6 years ago, I didn't realize that there would be millions of people, millions, not just thousands or hundreds of thousands, but millions of people all over the world in the streets. And they're all saying, this is not working. It's not working. We don't approve. Yeah. For example, the most recent event was, that's not true. There's events every day. However, when the United States blocked about 300 people entering from the Arab Arabian countries, within the hour, there were millions of people all over the world gathered together to discuss this whole situation. In the airports, all of the entry points from the east, whether it's out of London Heathrow or wherever, all of the major airports along the east, Boston, New York, etc., Dallas, there were immigration lawyers arriving with laptops and card tables, and they set up in the middle of the airport doing business. Yeah, so there's something both like really Uranian and inventive and new starting about Uranus and Aries. And there's something about Pluto and Capricorn that's, it really is spending quite a long time there. But if it was in Taurus, it would be 32 years. So, just think positively that, Pluto and Capricorn is a long time. Uranus and Aries, new starts, whole new beginnings. A breakdown has to take place before a breakthrough. The other interesting thing that's going on here is that we have Saturn in the sign of Sagittarius and the planet Jupiter in Libra. Okay, so we have Saturn in Sagittarius, the shadow, and Jupiter in Libra. Now, what's interesting about it is that Jupiter is actually in the ruler of Sagittarius. And so Jupiter is dispositing Saturn. So there is a conversation that's going on. a diplomatic conversation, and it's creating a tremendous amount of stress. And it's creating a tremendous amount of stress, not just with us in our own homes, but it's creating a lot of stress within the system itself. In other words, it does not look to me, if I were just to look at it, like a system that was going to withstand the opposition of the radical and the new. Now, granted, there's a lot of goings on in Pisces. Yes, we have a South Node, we have Neptune, Venus, Chiron. I mean, it's 50 years. Chiron, in the 60s, when I have this chart here, is also in Pisces. So we're having a Chiron return. Now, as it was in the middle of the 1960s when, you know, everything was supposed to have been okay after that. The fact is, we're going to have to repeat an amazing number of things. The SALT talks, we have to repeat, renegotiate the whole issue that was taking place in the 60s with the Israeli fight. It just goes on, and there's no point in me wasting our time going into detail, because you can at your leisure if you wish, but try not to do it at least 3 hours before you go to sleep. Otherwise you're going to get really excited and agitated. And there's the moon in Scorpio. Oh, how nice. So we have exactly in the same place as it was when Pluto was sighted. In fact, all the outer planets, if you'll remember from the last Zoom talk we did, all the outer planets were, I was going to say born, were sighted with the moon in Scorpio. And so we have a kind of a shaky looking administration signing up here, because the fourth house in mundane or political astrology is the party who is not in power. And the 10th house is the party that is in power. Okay, so if Pluto is in there, and then it must be that there's some kind of overthrow that's being attempted. And that it's squaring Uranus means that there will be radical activity involving what that might mean. And I mean, the 60s decade, there was something in the air. It really, we have to thank the Beats and, Kerouac and all of that lot, really, because and Ginsberg. I mean, my first turn on to something different was I went to the Queen Elizabeth Theatre in Vancouver, British Columbia, which is where they have opera. And on the stage was Bukowski and Leonard Cohen and Allen Ginsberg. And that's when I heard Howl, Hallelujah, and Bukowski and his, beat poetry. That began. And from there, it moved into what was, that picture of myself floating about in the mid-60s, asking what's going on. We're going to make a change, but we're going to make it good. Oh my goodness, that's not supposed to happen. What have I done? I'm sorry. Things got a bit kind of odd. Oh, right, that's because, right, we're going back to this. Now, are you able to ask questions? Because I would love it if you did, because I think that when we had the back in October of 1945, that was when the Manhattan Project, the nuclear bomb creation in Los Alamos, took place. And that period of time also was a Uranus-Pluto period of time. And it was involved the subsequent bombing of Nagasaki and Hiroshima. And within a month after that, Oppenheimer, who was the head of the Manhattan Project, the head of the discovery of the nuclear bomb, he went to see the president, Truman, and he said, listen, we really got to call a global leadership summit meeting and sign a pact that we will never use this as weapons of mass destruction. And Harry Truman said, no, sorry, not going to work. It's our ticket. It's our ticket to rule. And Oppenheimer was immediately banished and, you know, uh, just hounded as a communist. And so he retreated to the mountains of New Mexico, where his shack still is, and just rode his horses all the time. And I imagine with a broken heart. Great book, by the way, called American Prometheus: The Story of Robert Oppenheimer. And I really do recommend it. It's an excellent book. So here we are. And I'm going to open it up for some questions and observations about these charts and why it is that that what the opposition brought is going to have to all be repeated again as far as, reparations and change socially, psychologically. How do you see this?
Erin, this is Sue. I have a comment.
Hi, Sue.
Hi. I was looking at the eclipses and the Saros cycle of
Okay.
the eclipse coming up, and there was the eclipse that's coming up, the Pisces solar eclipse.
Yes.
Was of the same Saros cycle as one in December of 1944.
Oh.
And so, it looks like, we're kind of coming back around.
I know.
Those kind of issues again.
I'm really glad you brought that up. I'm so happy when people know something that I don't know, because I don't know a lot, but I don't know that the Saros cycle is gripping. It's fascinating. I wonder if by the time I'm sort of 90, I might get into really studying it, because the nodal cycles are vital. Now, what you're describing, has something to do with the, obviously the South Node is at 19 Sag here in 1965, but the cycle that you're telling us about is the great 19 and a half year cycle, where it was the same in 44 as it is now?
Yes. Yeah, and so, and at that point, the nodes were in Capricorn. The South Node was 18 Capricorn, and North Node was Cancer.
Well, so remember when we did the chart of the United States in the last session? And like Pluto was 15 degrees to 17 degrees of Cancer when it was sighted. And that happens to be the sun of the United States, right? So the transiting Pluto is now opposite the sun of the United States. So we're really looking at the United States having to really face up to the fact that it is the most powerful country in the world, and it's so awful to have that kind of power, and for it not to be, why not be respectful? Why not say, we are so powerful, we are so fucking powerful. What can we do to help? I mean, that should be the question. What can we do to help? And that's why millions of people all over the world, I mean, Kate Shawley from TMA, she sent me something I sent on to my kids and so on, of all the major cities in the world with millions of people in the streets, all over the world, in real time. And all of this is because this is the inventive part, Uranus, we have internet. Nothing will go by without something being known. That it also is a time where lies and deceit can take place very easily. And maybe that's part of what this secret is that you're mentioning here with the nodal cycle.
Well, yeah, and it's also the nodes of Pluto.
Yeah, I know, because
same thing.
We talked about that the nodes of Pluto and Saturn are in opposition to each other. Saturn's nodes in Cancer and Pluto's nodes in the opposite, right? The Saturn-Pluto nodes take hundreds of years to move, okay? However, Saturn and Pluto, when they're conjunct or in opposition, they're actually on each other's nodes as well.
Wow.
Yeah.
And they're coming to a conjunction themselves.
And they will be in their own dual nodal axis of Capricorn Cancer.
Wow.
And that's coming up in 2017. And I'm going to go back here. Love everyone, please. Okay, where is it? I have a list. There. Okay, so see in this list, I have to move this. Right, March 17th, 2015. That wasn't the last square. I mean, they go on, it's still going on. But in 2017, it begins to wane. But when I was mentioning earlier about orbs, I think it's probably a good idea to leave a reasonably large orb with the outer planets in this condition. Now, has anybody got any questions for me? Because, I know we have a limited time, but, we've really, yeah, go ahead.
Sachi, I just want to tell you, for those of you who are going to watch this video, it says Trim's inauguration is 2016, but it's really 2017. So the correct chart just has the wrong year.
I'm sorry, I can't hear you. I mean, what did you say?
Did anyone hear me say that?
Tashi, you're breaking up again.
It's no good.
Erin, on your slide, what she's trying to say is you have January 20th, 2016.
Oh, you know what? I can't see. I'm so sorry.
Your other slide.
I seem to be unable to write 2000.
No, that's okay. We're mentioning it that you pulled the chart for 2017.
Oh yeah, no, that is it, and that's what it says there.
Yeah. Okay. Just want to make sure that's mentioned. I think that's what she's saying.
That's really important. Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You sounded like you were underwater.
Any other questions, anyone?
I had a comment. I find it interesting that Saturn is now squaring the nodes of the first Uranus-Pluto conjunction, and Saturn happens to be in Sagittarius, and I think that's what we're seeing. A lot of the lies versus truths from those that are in authority. And also Mars looks like it's square the nodes, and also square the nodes in the inaugural chart.
Okay, I need to ask you, are you speaking of the nodes as they are, or the nodes of the planets?
No, the nodes of the March 1st, 1965 chart.
Oh, right. Yes. Yes, well, right. There they are, 19 Sagittarius. Correct. Okay, now I understand what you were saying. Indeed. And the node is, Saturn is actually, here, in a square to the nodes in March 65, and it's in the same degree as Saturn, pretty much, isn't it? And they're squaring nodes again.
Mm-hmm.
Now, how would you, as real people in the real world, this kind of a situation, obviously you've thought about it, what do you feel that could come out of this that shows that we are not about to embark upon something that will be the end of it all? It just can't be possible. I refuse to accept it. It's not going to happen. I mean, there are a few things to mention, I think, when we look, because I didn't spend a lot of time looking at Donald Trump's horoscope. But the one thing that I did notice is that his moon is at 21 Sagittarius and his sun is at 20-something, early 21, 22 Gemini, from the 4th to the 9th. And the 4th to the 9th, remember, is actually the party that's not in power and the party in power. So Saturn goes over his moon and he overthrows basically the party in power. Yeah. But it opposes his sun in the 10th house because he's a full moon person. And Saturn will go retrograde in the spring, and it will go back, and then it will go right over his moon again in August of 2017. Actually, September, late August 2017. Saturn goes direct on the 26th of August of 2017, exactly conjunct the moon of George. Wow, that's a flashback of Trump. And it makes me wonder, between now and then, I wonder if he's actually going to be in some way deposed. I mean, yeah, I'm not asking for people to be killed. I just don't believe in it. But you know, it would be nice to see him gone somewhere else, and you know, in the world, and not president of the most powerful country in the world, the country that could actually help so many people. So there are some thoughts. People have said pretty drastic things, but we're also looking, you know, at a very important gestation period between his election, which was Saturn on his moon, and the 9-month-ish cycle that the retrograde planets present as a birthing. And so there's something will be born that was sown at the inauguration. It will be born in the summer, August.
Okay. Let's see, can I talk now? Can you hear me?
Yes, you sound wonderful.
Oh, good. So I've been studying his chart, and you know, this inauguration chart has Mars at 24 Pisces, which was the degree of the eclipse before the election. And those degrees are always really sensitive to find a transiting planet on something in an inauguration chart, which seems to be one of these blueprint kind of building charts. You can see that there's going to be a lot of uprising of Mars in Pisces, and also because of all of that stuff going on in Pisces, it's a complex set of factors here. But I actually think, being Canadian, you know, I think that the natal Mercury-Pluto opposition in the American chart has a lot to do with the diversity in the country, and also the huge, intense opposition energy between the haves and have-nots, the North and the South, the black and the white. All countries have this disparity, and all of them have these, you know, kind of social, economic climates that America has. But this Mercury-Pluto opposition, when Pluto comes along and is squaring Uranus and it's rising like this, I think people do need to get out and voice their desires, and maybe this revolution is what's needed, because certainly the one in the 60s was needed. The Vietnam War was ugly.
Oh yes, it was a dreadful situation. I mean, it was just unthinkable. You know, I was in Canada at the time, and we had something called the Peace House, and it was run by this really cool lawyer, and we used to bring people up from the States, kids whose parents would contact the Peace House, et cetera, and we would walk them, make all these arrangements and so on. Then they'd be met at the you know, somewhere along the border. I really shouldn't even be saying this, and we used to call it the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And we walked them across, and then they'd be, you know, these were the fortunates. I mean, they could go, you know, to university, you know, there's other way. And Canada also, in the mid-70s, had a bus go across Canada and say, everybody who's up here out of the United States as a Vietnam vet, you know, Vietnam, who didn't want to go, came to Canada, you can come out and join Canada now.
It's happening again. I heard on the news yesterday that people are walking through the snow and walking into Alberta and all of the cold provinces. It's happening again. All these people who, if they were deported from the States, would be sent back to die in their countries, are going to our great country.
No, I saw it's such a sad situation. I saw a picture of this with children and so on, and people. Yeah, I mean, with the world in this kind of tumult, which is what it is, because this is not just about the inauguration. It's about what was going on at that time in the world, right? So we're looking at a world chart. It just happens to be slotted over, as you so elegantly said, a kind of blueprint, you know, set up time. And so we're really looking at the world as there is potential here for communication and for relationship and collaboration along the lines of international affairs. But the thing that strikes me also is that there's a lot of Pisces in this horoscope, as there was during the period of time that the mid-60s uprising was at it, in its peak. And I have a lot of clients that are coming in at this age. They're all in their 50, and what they've done with it is remarkable with these aspects, because I don't see every kind of person that was born with this aspect in the 60s. But, I see people who want to see an astrologer, me particularly. And so I have a kind of privileged look at what kinds of people. Some of them are environmental lawyers. One of them is a family lawyer. One of them is been very, very sick. She's got multiple sclerosis. She still is, working towards the betterment of humanity. She has MS. She's working for MS. It did give birth to a tremendous amount of humanitarianism. And I have teenagers, and they think that they are going to create a different kind of world. They are determined to do that. I mean, they are in their 16, 17, and one's 20. So we're looking at a hopeful youth. So if there is this kind of internet gathering, I mean, there's no way. I mean, we did a great job getting out of the streets. But what's happening right now is that people are wired into the collective, and they know everything at real time, and they're showing up, by the millions. This says a lot. It's exposing a tremendous amount. It says 1 more minute. 2 more.
That's the chat.
Oh. This medium has gotten a little more fancy since I was last on. It's very good. Okay, anyone else have anything to comment on or speak of? Because I think this is what's part of this whole morning, this afternoon.
Anyone have any other questions? I think, Wendy, you were trying to check in to ask a question. You need to unmute yourself.
I noticed that Mars is sitting right on, in the inaugural chart, that Mars is sitting pretty much on the Saturn Chiron in 65. Actually, it was 66. Saturn and Chiron were conjunct, and Mars is sitting on that particular point.
Well, yes,
That
a
may be
Chiron
why.
return, really, in this
Right.
case.
Yes.
Yeah, we're looking at a Chiron return. And Mars is exactly squaring Saturn. So, the inauguration speaks to an unseen mass, of people who are filled with spirit and soul, whose desires and longings are very, very deep, that their mystical needs, Venus, Neptune, Chiron, Mars, are to be spiritual warriors. And so, like when I showed you that picture where there's like Ram Dass, who's like stroked almost like 50, I can't remember, but I was meant to be listening to him talk the night that it happened. It was awful. Moon was in Scorpio. He's showing up. If people are showing up again, then that must mean that we have hope, that we're not deluded. Well, that's not true. You and I are not deluded. There are lots more of us. If there are ways of disillusioning people, Neptune in 10, Pisces, trined by the moon in Scorpio, all secrets hidden away, bringing them into the open is going to make a huge difference. And I think that's what the radicalism of this inauguration chart is about the fact that we can actually, in a sense, secretly, because nobody really knows who's doing what to whom on the internet. But when you go and you realize on the internet, because there are certain individuals who actually are on call on the internet, and they hear about something that takes place, like the the incarceration, if you will, of 300 people from Arabic countries, Arabian countries. Arabic is the language, Arabian is their culture. Um, and people are showing up within like 15 to 20 minutes. This is a fantastic Uranian square Pluto. We're going to bust you because we know it's happening. And so nobody's getting away with anything really under this. I mean, they're trying to have secrets, but it isn't going to work. It's not as easy like in the 60s where you could keep secrets. I mean, even when Watergate occurred in, this 70s, and there was the Watergate trials that occurred in the late 60s. But I mean, even then, we couldn't keep secrets, but right now you really can't. There are no secrets. I do wish it had said 2017, sorry. So I think that it has to do with the incredible spirit and the soul, coming through, with Chiron, involved in a sextile to Pluto. Yep, we're forgetting about that we have Neptune still sextile Pluto, although that's going to be waning out soon. And Venus and Chiron and Mars. And so we're looking at both the shadow function, which is that cute picture down below. And the shadow is always something that it comes up. You'll notice your own shadow coming up when you look at somebody and you don't even know who they are and you don't like them. And what you're doing is you're actually seeing everything about yourself that you don't like. And so with a president, such as the fellow that's in now in the United States, he's got a really massive shadow. And unfortunately, it does encompass almost everyone in the world. And I find that I don't even, people like to align him with other previous dictators and so on. I don't see the connection. I really don't. I see this as a complete one-off, and it could only happen in a place, in a country where there was enough money and a big disparity of immigrants. It could only happen in that kind of a country, and there is no other country like that in the world. And so it happens that we've given birth somehow to this moment, to this array at a set time and a set place. And it happens every single 4 years. And this is very unusual in any country. Most countries just say, oh, go away, we don't like you anymore, and they bring in somebody new. Tanks hit the streets and there's a revolution. In this country, you actually vote for them. And so this situation that we're looking at here as a picture of the times is actually a picture of the world dying to change, looking at revolution, looking at discussion, Jupiter sextile Saturn. There is something here that says, we really do have a possibility of finding some sense of balance and negotiation skills in this whole period of time. Jupiter opposite Uranus is amazing because it is the adventure of what's coming. And we just held a little water protectors gathering here, in town, and a bunch of people came. It was fantastic. Watched a really funny movie called Tank Girl, which apparently is really cool. And I'd never seen it. My kids obviously had. And I made a bunch of money for the legal fund. So, people are really getting together and finding ways of reliving, if you will, the opposition. It's sort of like, okay, we went through the opposition. That sort of didn't work. Now we have to repeat ourselves. And that's why I said in my newsletter, do we really have to do this again? Like I wrote for in 1970, the Environmental Protection Agency was established in 1970. And I'm going, oh, really? Then why, where are they now? They're the SALT talks began. Strategic Arms Limitation Talks, U.S. Nixon, Soviet Union, Brezhnev. Do we have to do it again? It's almost like we have to repeat ourselves. It's like they didn't hear us the first time.
Erin, can you guys hear me now?
Yes.
Oh, good. This is Wendy. I want to ask you a question about some of what you just said and some of the chart.
Yes.
So the other night on PBS, I watched a special about John Lewis. You know, he was with Martin Luther King and marching and Freedom Riders and all of that. And
Yes.
in 1965, the Voting Rights Act was enacted. So I was wondering.
Yes. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I couldn't list them all. Wow. Okay.
Yeah,
65.
well, I've written about it a lot too, and I never actually realized that. So when I was watching, I was like, oh, and it made me wonder if Saturn opposing Uranus Pluto had something to do with that,
Yes.
right?
It did because,
And
because the dark side, the shadow was saying, you know, I'm going to break your back, even though I'm just a punk, you know, I'm just Saturn. I'm not Pluto and Uranus. I can't blow the planet up, but I'm going to do something, you know, that is authoritative, has a very correct stance, is going to bring in some historical material, right? And what you're telling us is fantastic.
yeah, I think it might have been in the spring, you know, when they were the violence, a lot of the violence was happening around it. And then was it Lyndon Johnson that I don't know who voted it in, but so that was interesting for me to learn. And then the other thing, something about now that you were talking about, and I don't remember now what it is. It has something to do with Saturn again, though. But anyway, maybe it'll come back to me in a minute.
Okay, Saturn square the Chiron.
No, I don't
Okay.
remember what it is right this moment.
Okay, that's really important. Thank you. Anybody else?
We are at 2:09 now. So anyone else have any questions? We want to wrap it up.
I remember what it is, Erin.
It's
Go ahead,
2:09.
Wendy.
So, okay, we have all this Pisces now, and we had Chiron and Saturn in Pisces in 65 at least, and probably 66 or whatever year it went through. I don't
Well,
remember.
yeah, the Chiron return is 50 years almost exactly. And it's the
Right. I
time.
mean, I
Yeah.
know because I have it. I have a 65 chart, but I just don't remember if it's 66 or 64 or whatever. But
Oh,
so now the nodes, right? The nodes moving through, the south node moving through Pisces with Neptune and Chiron. I mean, that's been very loaded, right? So now when the nodes move into Aquarius, Leo, you were talking about the deception and not being able to hide the lies and all of that. I'm wondering if the nodal movement into the other signs, the next signs, will help illuminate more of, you know, help clear up some of the Pisces confusion.
I have absolutely no idea.
Oh,
To be honest, I really don't know because I'm already busy here trying to figure out how long it's going to be before the North Node moves into Leo. But
not long. Couple months, 3 months or something. It's going to happen pretty quick.
okay,
I don't have the exact date though, sorry.
It's beginning of May, I think.
Mm-hmm.
Like the second week of May, I think.
It doesn't matter. It was just a thought. I was just wondering.
Good. I mean, a thought is a good thing. Yes, I mean that's what this whole thing is. Is it once upon a great notion? It's just like unbelievably articulate, I think, as that describes the situation as it arose, so to speak, Uranus rising, at that moment. And at that moment, we saw a picture of someone whose youngest child, a son, looked like he was about to heave himself off the podium or start to cry. there's something deeply wrong with the whole concept of the way families are being treated as well, you know, in this chart. You know, it speaks to families. Leo is the child archetype. The sun is in Aquarius. It always would be at 0 Aquarius. And so we're really looking at a real serious issue with the moon in Scorpio, which wouldn't have been, it'd be rare to be in the chart maybe every, and the moon is, you know, really about families, and families are in threat, endangered, yeah, at this stage. But it's the public that is saying something. So this is sort of the general public, the appearance of the election, the party that is being usurped or the one that's exiting in power, and this is the party in power, and it's Pluto and the sun. And so we're looking really at a horoscope that's angles actually don't change either. Like the actual angular relationship of the Aries to Libra doesn't change on the date of January 20th of the years that they have these elections. So this is a fixed picture. There's a fixed family kind of setup with the horoscope wheel itself, and then the planets are just slotted in there to say, well, gee, okay, it happens that this year Uranus is rising. You know, and it's going to be 4 years before another one occurs. So therefore, we won't have at all the same fill-in as we do in this one. But there is some, you know, indication that they're you know, that it's very unstable, that we have an extremely unstable and over the top Jupiter opposite Uranus. Gosh, you know, if I have clients who have Jupiter opposite Uranus, I always do caution them on not taking on, you know, battles that they really truly can't win. That it would be better for them to really find that place where they can use their aggression and their you know, ability to, you know, really exercise themselves as opposed to, you know, use it as an intellectual exercise. Literally, Uranus square Pluto, as we saw, there's always Uranus-Pluto involved in anything that has to do with something that's going to blow up, whether it's, you know, a situation which can blow up, and that's what I'm kind of thinking this chart says, is that we're going to get a blow up. It's just going to collapse, and we're going to have to really do some really interesting horoscopy afterwards to see what goes on.
Thank you.
Hi.
It is 2:15.
Okay.
Have to end it now.
Okay.
Yeah, thanks for a wonderful meeting, and sorry I had a bit of trouble earlier.
And that's okay. It all works out in the end.
Yeah, it does.
Or even halfway through or in the beginning.
So Sarah, if you could unmute everybody, we could just say a quick thank you.
Yeah,
Erin, thank you so much. That was just amazing.
Oh, good. Thank you. I got a little sort of tongue-tied at the end there, but you know, I really enjoy speaking to you people, and I'm glad to see us together again. So, listen, take care of yourself. Yeah.
You
Thanks,
too.
Erin.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right. Lots of love.
Come
Thanks,
again.
Erin.
Bye. Bye. Bye, everybody all over the world. It's great.